So I think you guys are more familiar with Neil Gaiman than I am. He's been brought up on multiple, we're still like, not okay, SA charges. So,
Right.
And the interesting thing about Neil Gaiman, I'll just start this off with a quick story.
Please.
So when I was at Rowan, one of our assignments was that you had to go to a speech or a lecture or whatever, and it was hosted by Neil Gaiman. Now,
That's awesome.
That does sound very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Pedro, you and I had that apartment back in the day, and that was right around that time frame. So I hit the little, conundrum of having to drive all the way to Glassboro from that apartment on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I went up to my my instructor, my professor at the time, and said, I'm not going to be able to do this. Is there some way that I can make up this assignment that's way too far on a day that I'm not already scheduled to go to class? She said it was okay. I go into the office to turn the ticket in because I'm like, I'm not going to use it. Somebody wants to use the ticket.
Sure.
And this young woman was ahead of me and was asking if there were any tickets. And on her way out, the people were pointing she wants a ticket. And I'm like, oh. I was like, here you go.
Hello. Could you have scalped it?
What's that?
Could you have scalped it?
No.
See that and then take her outside oh, I got a ticket for $10. And,
why does there always got to be something shady? It was a very wholesome story.
all right.
So
just $10, not a blowjob.
Was he speaking at Rowan?
Yeah, he was speaking at Rowan.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so that was kind of because I'm not a big comic book reader. I read X-Men, Spider-Man when I was a kid, but not much after that. So Neil Gaiman's work is not something that I'm very privy to. But I did hear about this story where he's facing all of these charges.
Yes.
One of them from, I think, a former nanny that they took in, she was homeless or something like that, about 22. And it was kind of one of those situations where I know you guys are more familiar with his work.
Yeah.
And you might be one of those situations you're oh, wow. Do you rethink how you thought of him because of these?
It's funny. If I could jump in first real quick. So Neil Gaiman, for me, he's done a lot of work, obviously, but in particular, his Sandman series, quite extensive, was very important to me, kind of coming out of high school, reading the whole thing. I have it. In fact, I've had it twice. The whole top to bottom compendium. I had it once. I lent it out. It disappeared into the ether. And then a couple years ago, Christina rebought me the whole compendium.
What a peach she is.
She is. Christina's the best.
Shout out.
And the whole compendium, she's gonna love this shout out. She loves the shout out. But and every book is signed by Neil Gaiman.
Oh, that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to go up in value, especially now.
Yeah. And it's I love it. And so there's Sandman. American Gods was another one that I really enjoyed.
That was him and Grant Morrison, I think.
I think so, yeah. And he's done some works that have really kind of been formative to the type of media that I like to take in and such like that. And now, because obviously he's in the news again, but this has kind of been brewing from like a building type of situation now for a little while now.
Yeah.
It's more to the forefront because comics are cool.
Well, yes.
And now people care.
And it's gotten to the point, so Sandman went to Netflix and it had its first
I guess that's
first season.
I guess that's not getting renewed.
The second season's already been filmed.
And that's where a lot of misinformation's been coming out about this, where they canceled it after the second season. From my understanding is they were always going to end it at the second season.
That's what it seems like to me.
And that's what Netflix does. They just cancel shit that's popular for no reason.
And with the way they're doing Sandman, because they're doing Dream's Tale, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. It's going to get
after
lost.
2 seasons. But another one of his shows came out, Dead Boys Detective Agency, and that just got straight up canceled after its first season. And that was in the midst of, obviously, less was known then, but it seems like a lot more has come to the surface recently. And it's one of those things. It's obviously this can lean into cancel culture.
Yep.
And for me, it's obviously if everything is true, all the allegations are true, then he's a giant piece of shit.
Yeah.
But his art, certain pieces or elements of his art were incredibly important to me.
Yeah.
So it's how do you make that separation between the artist and there aren't.
But with that, it's also like look at everything Neil Gaiman's done,
Yeah.
and look at and I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but if anybody was gonna have this allegation, look at the dude and look at his work. Like, I'm not surprised. So it's like kind of a non-entity to me because like, duh.
I'll say, I'll chime in with 2 points about it.
Sure.
One is that I think that as people become, I think that power corrupts.
Yep.
You know, the old saying is power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think that as you become a celebrity, you are much more inclined towards doing things that you wouldn't normally do as a regular person.
100%.
And we're
Agreed.
talking about abusing people, etc. Right? So that's like the one thing in terms of like why you would do this type of shit, you know? Because like I would think that I would never engage in that. I'm also not a fucking celebrity where everything is handed to you and then you begin to like look outside of your own box. I would
Look
like
outside
to
of your
think that-
box. Power dynamics come
Yeah,
into play.
exactly. I would like to think I would still never do those types of things, but it's not from nowhere that celebrities and people that we know. It's not just that they get caught. It's that they also have everything.
Yeah.
But it's also that height that we put them on.
Yeah.
That and then they fall from grace so far that
they-
it's like, my God.
When you already have everything, then you're going to look for more exotic things, and sometimes those things are things that you and I would look at as being forbidden for good moral reasons.
But to that point, Steven Seagal,
Oh. Oh wow. Okay.
Like-
let's do this.
I
had another point, but I want to actually do yours.
he's been accused of some very like keeping a girl in her goddamn basement for
He's
I don't
a
know however
piece of
long.
shit.
Well, he was like, granted, everybody knew he was a piece of shit. But then that comes out like, oh, he had kept a girl in his basement. Well, like, I don't remember the details to it, but
It was something along like.
but we also all forgot about it so goddamn quick, and he wasn't
the news
crucified at
cycle-
all.
The
Like,
news
granted,
cycle is quick, and people are often very quick to forget things.
but
So-
like, why are we putting Neil? Like, not to say we shouldn't put Neil Gaiman on the cross for whatever
Because
he may or may not have done, but like, why aren't other people held to that same standard?
Because nobody respected Steven Seagal in the first place.
Yeah, but more people knew Steven Seagal than they knew Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, but he's not respectable. You just assumed that Steven Seagal was
Yeah, but it's still not a good thing for anybody to fucking do.
I want to make my other point, if I may.
Please make your point.
My other point about it would be that, to tie in a little bit more with what you were saying, Justin, is that I've been shocked at times by how poorly I imagined this person's character to be. Some celebrity, some famous person that I viewed in a certain way, right? And then you find something out and you interpret it as truth. So, in the case of Gaiman, I assume that that's true, which sucks.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, that's a different story. But in this case, I'm assuming that's probably accurate.
I assume as well.
And this is obviously unfolded many times over decades, For me, it doesn't change how I view the work. In other words, you could be, like the work that I actually really dislike how culturally and individually how we make it this thing that a person's achievements need to be associated with the person that they are. Because you could be the biggest piece of shit in the world and still achieve something. The example that I always give of that, because you know that I'm like an admirer of history, and Adolf Hitler was the very first person.
Hard sell.
I know it is.
You should have went Chris
He was the
Benoit.
very first political leader to pass laws that were about animal rights, right? He was obviously the pinnacle of a piece of shit person. We mostly all agree on that.
I would
We
say,
only
yeah.
have few
I would like to
exceptions.
say entirely
Yeah.
all agree.
I would like to say, he thought Jews were animals, though. So how good
Let's
of
not
an
go down
animal
that-
rights
yeah,
guy
let's-
was
let's not go
It's
down that
like,
road.
That's dangerous ground there. Don't want to go down that road.
My point is that we're talking about a person who was absolute garbage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We all agree that he was a horrible human being, et cetera, et cetera. But should we ignore what was actually done? In this case, I'm an animal lover, so I love that this was the initiation of laws that were passed to protect animals.
Well, I think you can kind of balance the two.
They're separated things.
The separate, like you can like in the extreme case that you just laid out with Hitler.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, nothing he could have really done undoes all of the fucking evils that he
millions of
did.
murders.
That's kind of my point,
That's-
though. That's kind of my point, though. That's what I'm saying, is that it doesn't need to undo. In other words, he was a horrible human being, but we can also separately appreciate that something good was done for animals.
In this culture, it's really hard to be able to be like to do that
this
with
culture,
that individual.
In this culture, there is no account for nuance. It's
Yeah.
bulk fire sale.
Because I think that really, like that.
But during Hitler's time, like there was the world was much bigger. Like nothing was so under a microscope the way it is now.
Out of your element on this.
Yeah, I would like to drop the Hitler thing in its entirety if we could.
You're welcome, Dad. my point in that, and in bringing up the extreme, is that it's not to harp on the Hitler thing.
Yeah.
And that's my bad. My point is that we can judge people as who they are and what they did, and then also separate it from the things that we perceive to be of value.
Now, I don't have a problem with that because I do think like Michael Jackson accused of all of these things.
Yeah.
And I can still enjoy Thriller.
Great musician.
Yeah. I can still think, well, like, he did a lot of awful things, but goddamn, that motherfucker could write a beat.
But see, so then what I would say is let's get back to what we're actually really talking about. You're judging a person and you're judging the thing.
Yes.
They're two different things. A person who is garbage, or whatever you want to describe them as, a good person, a bad person, whatever. Here you have a person, right? That's not the thing that you're talking about. A garbage person can make great music, can make great art, can do all of these things. A great person, very decent human being, can do the opposite. They can fail at making, art and music and so on and so forth.